Welcome to Voices in Democracy. I am William, and today I am joined by my team, Brian, Aiden, Kiana, Dare, and Danae. In this episode, we are discussing DC Statehood and one central question: can American democracy truly be complete when people living in its nation's capital still do not have full voting representation in Congress?
Exactly. In the documentary, democracy is presented as something people have to keep questioning and improving. That connects to DC statehood because DC residents are part of the country in every major way. They pay taxes, follow federal laws, vote for the president, serve in the military, and participate in civic life. But they still do not have voting senators or a voting representative in the House.
Our Teen Civics participation works focused on helping people understand that DC statehood is not just a local issue, it is a national democracy issue. The goal is not only to take a side, but to explain why people disagree, what the research says, and how the issue connects to democracy participation.
That point connects back to what is democracy, because the documentary asks us to think about who democracy is really for. If people have the responsibility of citizenship but not equal political power, then democracy is not fully working for them.
Heritage also points to the 23rd Amendment, which gives D.C. electoral votes in presidential elections. Their concern is that if most of D.C. became a state, there would still be legal questions about what happens to the remaining federal district and its electoral votes.
But our episode also needs to include an alternative point of view, and that is where the Heritage Foundation comes in. The Heritage argues that DC statehood raises constitutional concerns. Their position is that DC was created as a federal district, separates from any state, and that is making most of DC a state, would require a constitutional amendment.
So one side sees a constitutional path, and the other side sees a constitutional wall. Brookings argues that the Congress has the power to act, while Heritage argues that the Constitution creates limits that cannot be ignored.
And that brings us back to the learning experience. What is democracy? The documentary does not present democracy as finished or perfect. It shows that democracy has always had limits and exclusions. The question is whether people are willing to recognize those limits and work to fix them.
Looking at these think tanks together made the debate clear. Supporters focus on democracy, fairness, representation, local control, and civil rights. Opponents focus on constitutional design, legal tradition, and the 23rd Amendment, and the original purpose of the federal district.
DC statehood is a strong example of that. The issue forces us to ask whether representation should depend on geography, history, or political convenience. If DC residents are governed by federal laws, pay federal taxes, and serve the country, then the democratic question becomes, why should they have less national representation?
And it's even asked whether the nation's capital should remain a place where democracy is talked about more than it is fully practiced.
Our team's takeaway is that democracy is not only about having rights written down, it's about whether people can actually use those rights equally. DC residents participate in the country, but they do not have the same voice in Congress as people living in states.
To close, what is democracy helped us see that democracy is not just a system. It is a question we have to keep answering. Brookings and Brenman show the democratic and civil rights case for DC statehood. Heritage and Cato show the constitutional concerns that supporters must address. Together, these sources show that DC statehood is not just a political debate. It is a test of representation, citizenship, and equal power. Democracy is unfinished when people carry the responsibilities of citizenship without equal political power.
Democracy is unfinished when people carry the responsibilities of citizenship without equal political power.
To close, what is democracy helped us see that democracy is not just a system. It is a question we have to keep answering. Brookings and Brenman show the democratic and civil rights case for DC statehood. Heritage and Cato show the constitutional concerns that supporters must address. Together, these sources show that DC statehood is not just a political debate. It is a test of representation, citizenship, and equal power. Democracy is unfinished when people carry the responsibilities of citizenship without equal political power.